It was around 4 in the morning on a Saturday when I was heading to work on the interstate. I was already running late, so I stayed in the middle lane and kept my speed up. I had to be going at least 75 or 80 miles per hour. That is why I was startled when I saw headlights in my left mirror coming up on me incredibly fast. Whoever was driving that car had to be pushing 90 or even 100. Within seconds, the vehicle caught up and began to pass me. It was a gray Honda Accord coupe. As it pulled alongside me, I glanced over, curious about who would be driving that fast before sunrise. Even though it was still dark, I could make out the driver's face as he briefly looked in my direction. That was when I noticed movement in the back seat. There was a young woman back there, and she looked like she was pounding on the rear window. At first, I did not fully process what I was seeing. My mind tried to brush it off as someone joking around. Most people do not immediately jump to the worst possible conclusion. But then I saw the driver shove her down out of sight beneath the window, and the car swerved at the same time. That was the moment everything changed. She was not playing around. She was trying to get someone's attention. She needed help. I sped up and moved in behind them so I could keep the car in sight. As I followed, I saw the driver repeatedly reach back with a swinging motion. It looked like he was striking her. I could see her arms flailing in the back seat. I felt sick. I was watching what appeared to be a kidnapping happening right in front of me. We were both flying down the interstate at about 95 miles per hour. While trying to keep up, I grabbed my phone and dialed 911. I explained what I was seeing and gave them our location as best as I could. Suddenly, the brake lights on the Honda lit up, and the driver began slowing down in front of me. It was clear he had realized I was following him. As much as I wanted to stop and help the woman immediately, I had no idea if he had a weapon. I quickly went around him and pressed down on the gas. I did not want to lose them, though. I took the next exit, but did not go all the way up the ramp. Instead, I waited near the edge, watching for the Honda to pass on the highway below. As soon as it did, I drove over the grass and merged back onto the interstate behind them. All the while I stayed on the phone with the dispatcher, describing the car, our speed, and our direction. To catch up again, I had to push my car close to 90 miles per hour. When I finally closed the distance, the driver noticed me once more. Before I could get too near, he slammed on his brakes again. I tried to pass him, but he swerved and cut me off, forcing me to stop. Then he jumped out of his car and started running toward mine. I saw something in his hand, though I could not tell what it was. Panic took over. I threw my car into reverse and backed up quickly until he stopped chasing me. Before he could return to his vehicle, I shifted back into drive and sped past him. The 911 operator told me a state trooper was not far ahead and instructed me to keep going until I reached him. The man got back into his car and began chasing me. Both of us were still driving at dangerously high speeds. When I finally saw flashing red and blue lights in my rearview mirror behind the Honda, I felt an overwhelming sense of relief. With me ahead and the police behind him, the driver had nowhere to go. He pulled over onto the grass along the side of the highway. I stopped a short distance in front of his car, leaving several car lengths between us. I still did not know what might happen next. The trooper approached with his weapon drawn and ordered the man out of the car with his hands raised. I stepped out of my vehicle and watched as the officer forced him to the ground and placed him in handcuffs. Another patrol car arrived moments later. An officer opened the back door of the Honda and helped the woman out. She was bruised, crying, and shaking. Despite everything, she kept thanking me over and over, saying I had saved her life. The man turned out to be her former boyfriend. He had gone to her house earlier that morning. When she refused to speak with him, he attacked her, forced her into the back seat of his car, and locked the child's safety locks so she could not escape. I still think about what might have happened if no one had seen her desperately trying to get help through that back window. I took a trip out to Boston to support a family member who was running in the Boston Marathon. Since I was coming from Chicago and really do not enjoy flying, I decided to make the drive to Massachusetts instead. The route had me taking Route 20, which might be one of the longest highways in the country. I left around 3 in the afternoon right after finishing work. My GPS estimated the drive would take about 15 hours. Knowing the way I usually drive, I figured I could probably make it in 14. The arrival time showed 6 in the morning, but I was aiming for closer to 5 if I did not stop. On long road trips, I prefer to power through without many breaks. I would rather finish the entire drive in one stretch. Large portions of Route 20 are just open land, with very little traffic for miles at a time. Around 10 hours into the trip, at about 1 in the morning, I was practically the only car on the highway. I had my music turned up loud to help keep me alert. In my mind, I felt like I was almost there, even though I still had several hours left. I was trying to stay positive. Despite drinking 2 cups of coffee earlier, I could feel myself getting a little tired. I did not want to stop again for more caffeine, so I pushed through. I told myself that collapsing into a bed once I arrived would feel even better if I just kept going. At one point, I was completely alone on the road. Then suddenly, I noticed headlights appear in my rearview mirror. I was driving in the left lane, and the vehicle behind me was getting uncomfortably close, so I moved over to the right lane. The truck sped up, past me, and then slowed down until my front bumper was lined up with his rear bumper. For some reason, he began matching my speed and stayed there for what felt like forever. I tried speeding up to get ahead of him. As soon as I moved in front, he switched into my lane directly behind me. He came so close, it looked like he might hit my car. I had no choice but to accelerate more to create some distance. The last thing I wanted was to deal with road rage in the middle of the night. When I increased my speed, he did the same. I changed back into the left lane, and he followed immediately. That was when I knew this was not random. It was clearly not an unmarked police vehicle. It was an older, worn-looking pickup truck. Suddenly, the truck began flashing its headlights at me from behind. I refused to slow down. I was genuinely scared because I had never experienced anything like this before. I pressed the gas a little harder, adding another 5 or 10 miles per hour, hoping I would eventually see a police officer or at least another car nearby. There were no other vehicles ahead of us for miles. Occasionally, a car would pass on the opposite side of the highway, but that was it. Then the pickup changed lanes and accelerated hard. I heard the loud roar of its engine as it sped past me. The driver cut directly in front of me and then slammed on the brakes. I tried to steer around him, but he kept swerving to block me. I was forced to hit my brakes as well. I started honking because there was nothing else I could do. As we slowed down, the driver turned on his hazard lights and stuck his arm out the window, waving for me to pull over to the side of the road. There was no way I was going to do that. When he began drifting toward the grass, I seized the opportunity to swing around him and press the gas pedal to the floor. My sedan had no trouble picking up speed, but even when I reached 100 miles per hour, he was still not far behind. I took the first exit I saw and came to a stop at the red light at the end of the ramp. I assumed he would have given up by then, but when I looked in my mirror, his headlights were still there. The truck pulled up behind me and then moved into the lane beside me at the light. I glanced over, and the window rolled down. Inside were 3 people who appeared to be men, all wearing vendetta masks. They stared at me, clearly trying to intimidate me, and it worked. I ran the red light and sped onto the main road, where there were finally other cars around. After that, the pickup stopped following me. For a while, I honestly believed I might not make it out of that situation alive. It felt like something far worse than simple road rage. I never got a license plate number. I cannot even remember seeing a plate at all. All I recall is that it was a black pickup truck from the 1990s. Once I felt safe, I pulled into a Walmart parking lot and went to sleep in my car. I woke up around 8 in the morning and completed the rest of the drive. When I arrived, I told my family what had happened and warned them to always be careful when driving late at night. It was a Tuesday night in March when I started the drive home from a friend's place in the city. Normally, the trip would take about an hour if the weather was clear, but that night a thick fog had settled over the long, isolated highway. After midnight, this stretch of road was usually empty, except for the occasional semi-truck, their license plates showing colors and lettering from states I had never visited. It was around 1 in the morning. I had spent the entire day out with friends, walking around for hours, shopping and trying out new cafes. By the time I got in my car, I was exhausted. My eyes felt heavy, and the dense fog turned the highway into an endless blur of drifting gray. I drove carefully, sometimes slowing almost to a crawl and switching on my hazard lights so any car behind me would know I was there. Out of nowhere, a vehicle appeared ahead, sitting awkwardly with 2 wheels on the highway and 2 on the shoulder. I slammed on my brakes and swerved slightly, barely missing the back bumper before pulling in behind it. My heart was pounding from how close I had come to hitting it, so I shifted into park to steady myself. As I watched, the black sedan slowly rolled forward until it was fully parked on the shoulder. It sat there for a few seconds, then the driver's window rolled down. An arm reached out and waved, signaling for me to pull over. My adrenaline was still rushing from the sudden stop, and it seemed reasonable to move farther off the main road. I followed as the sedan turned gently onto a small side road nearby. It stopped, and the driver's door opened. A tall, thin man stepped out and walked toward me through the fog, wearing a black winter jacket and jeans. He looked to be in his early 30s and was smiling as he approached, my headlights lighting up his face. I lowered my window just slightly, thinking he might apologize for stopping in such a dangerous position. When he reached my car, he gestured for me to roll the window down more. I shook my head, feeling a knot of unease in my stomach, and told him I could hear him fine. He asked where I was headed, and I answered that I was going home. He said the fog was not expected to clear any time soon, and insisted it was unsafe to keep driving. I told him I was comfortable continuing. He lifted his eyebrows and asked why I had pulled over in the first place. Not wanting to escalate the situation, I lied and said I had received a phone call and needed to stop to answer it. He gave a small smirk, and I had the uneasy feeling he knew I was not telling the truth. He then said he lived about 5 minutes down the road with his wife and son and offered for me to wait there until the fog lifted. I shook my head again, but he did not seem willing to accept my answer. He tried to frighten me, claiming that the chances of dying in a crash were much higher in foggy conditions. He added that I looked tired and should think about my family before risking the drive. I stood firm, refusing his offer. His expression began to change, and I could see irritation building. He glanced back toward his car, and that was when I noticed movement in the passenger seat that I had not seen before. Suddenly, he reached for my door handle and tried to pull it open. Thankfully, I had locked it. At the same moment, the passenger door of his car swung open, and another man jumped out, running toward me with a baseball bat in his hands. I quickly threw my car into reverse. The driver shouted something at the other man as I pressed hard on the gas. The man with the bat took a swing at my vehicle, but missed. Fortunately, I had not driven too far from the highway, but in the heavy fog, it was difficult to tell where the side road ended and the main road began. I turned my steering wheel and shifted into drive, hoping no cars were coming up behind me. I accelerated quickly and merged back onto the highway without looking back. Even now, whenever I pass that stretch of road, I wonder if they tried to stop anyone else that night. and what might have happened if I had lowered my window just a little more. Dangerous situations tend to unfold on dark highways. Nighttime seems to bring out the worst kinds of people, so you have to stay alert. This happened in 2020, around the time COVID first began spreading. I was working overnight shifts at a hospital back then, and my schedule was constantly changing. I always drove the same way home, taking a parkway about 10 miles north to my town. It was rarely busy even during the day, so at night it felt completely deserted, especially once COVID emptied the roads. I almost never saw state police out there either. Most of the time that worked in my favor, since I could get home faster without traffic. One early morning, while driving back after a shift, I noticed a red flashing SOS light set up along the side of the road. Each flash illuminated the rear of a car parked on the shoulder. It was obvious someone needed help, and for whatever reason I was feeling generous that night, so I pulled over ahead of the vehicle. As I passed it, I saw a man waving his arms. I turned on my hazard lights and stepped out to approach him. From his skin tone and faint accent, I guessed he was Hispanic. Because he was wearing a COVID mask, I could not tell his exact age, but I would estimate late 20s or early 30s. I asked what was wrong. He said his battery had died after sitting pulled over for too long. I asked whether he had jumper cables, since I did not. He told me he did not. I was unsure how else I could help aside from maybe offering him a ride, but then he asked if he could use my phone. He claimed his phone had also died. I hesitated, uncomfortable about handing my unlocked phone to a stranger on a dark highway, but I gave it to him anyway. I unlocked it and opened the phone app. He dialed someone and slowly walked away while speaking into it. His driver door remained open, so I decided to check the car myself. I sat in the front seat and noticed the keys were still in the ignition. I turned the key slightly, and the dashboard lights came on. I tested the hazards. They worked. I turned on the radio, and that worked too. Then I turned the key fully to start the engine, and it started immediately. I barely had time to register that something felt wrong before I felt two arms wrapped tightly around my neck from behind. Someone in the back seat was trying to choke me. At the same time, I heard a loud popping sound repeatedly. It was the man who had my phone. I managed to break free from the grip fairly quickly. When I turned around, I saw it was a teenage boy hiding in the back seat. The man with my phone was sprinting back toward the car, yelling. I chose to run rather than fight. I dashed back to my own car and sped away as soon as the engine turned over. As I drove off, I heard another sharp pop, which I realized seconds later was a gunshot. My rear windshield had been pierced, with cracks spreading outward from the hole. I did not know what to do. The man still had my phone. When I got home, I told my parents everything and used our house phone to call 911. I explained that I had been lured into a setup, that someone was hiding in the back seat, and that the man who fired at my car still had my unlocked phone filled with personal information. The police advised me to contact AT&T immediately and ask them to trace the most recent call within the past hour. But customer service did not open until 7 in the morning, so I had to wait. Using my dad's phone, I logged in to find my iPhone to lock my device remotely. I hoped I acted quickly enough before they accessed my home address or anything sensitive. When 7 arrived, I called AT&T to request details about the last call made, but they told me there were no outgoing calls after the one I made to my mom at work earlier that day. That meant the man never actually called anyone, and then I discovered even worse news. Every bit of Bitcoin I had stored in my Coinbase account was gone, worth thousands of dollars, and my phone's location stopped updating once it was either turned off or destroyed. I never recovered it. About a week later, I woke up to my mom sounding worried. My dad knocked on my bedroom door and asked me to come outside. I felt uneasy but followed him. He said he and my mom heard someone in our backyard during the night, though when they looked, no one was there. My mom wanted to call the police, but my dad suggested waiting. Deep down, I feared it might have been the same man who took my phone. My address was saved everywhere on that device. Thankfully, 2 years have passed, so it is likely over. Even so, I will never again stop to help someone stranded on a highway in the middle of the night.